We're in the current Daf Masechta Sotah Daf Lamed Gimel. We begin 7 lines down with the Amud. We're in the middle of this list of items that are Nemad and Mechalosh, which opened up this parak in the previous Daf, and we continue with that list. Shis Kos Bazim Kazach the Cheskel turn to Daf Achaim Shem of today's Daf. So we're discussing today's Daf, like we said, is the list in the Mishnah Il Nemad Mechalosh, and the sources for Mitzvah's Kri, which may be said in all languages. Tfil B'Chaloshin, that of a Yachid and a Tzibur, we actually differentiate between how a Yachid could daven and how it's Tzibur Kedavan. And then we continue with the list of El Nemam B'Lashon HaKodesh, the things that have to be said specifically in Lashon HaKodesh. And Machlekes between Yehuda and Eliezer regarding the location of Hagriz and Ha'ibah, which was mentioned parenthetically in our Mishnah, because we wanted to say the source of the halacha of many things that have to be said in Lashon HaKodesh, because we learned that from Benisa B'Marta by the Levium. So we that was by Hagriz and Ha'ibah, so that's why the Gemara gets into that discussion. So we begin Daf Lamed Gimel, 7 lines down at the top of the Amud. We continue with the sources for El Nemam B'Chaloshin, and the next one the Mishnah mentioned was Tefillah. When the Mishnah mentions that Tefillah can be said in any language, really, you don't need a pasuk, because says the Gemara, Rachmehi, it's beseeching mercy, and Kol Heichad B'Yam Matzli. However, you could daven, that's the wording that you understand, that's how you daven, because the whole point is Rachman Ali B'Baya, and Hashem wants to hear you. So of course, that's said B'Chaloshin. Now, says the Gemara, really? The Tefillah B'Chaloshin, is that really so? The Tefillah can be said in any language? But Rabbi Yehuda says, a person should never ask for what he needs. In Aramaic. Because Rabbi Yochanan says, whoever asks what he needs in Aramaic, the ministering angels don't address him. Why? The malachim, that's why we have many times when we say certain things at Amish, we say malachim pashtainish, right? Angels don't recognize Aramaic. So how can you say it in any language? It's not difficult. When you're davening by yourself, you need the Malach HaSharas to help you. So then we're saying, be careful, don't say in Aramaic, because they're not going to help you. Habetzibur, when we say B'Chaloshin, is when you're with a minion. Then you don't need them. Like it says the pasuk in Eiv, and the Gemara brings the brachas, he can kill Kabbalah Yimas. He's never discussed it in Tefillah Shalom. That's why it's a very important thing, davening with a minion, because you could be the Gresta Rebbe, the Gresta Tzaddik, Gresta whatever, and your child might not be in this Kabbalah. But a minion is always, always, always received. So that's the difference. When you're davening by yourself, don't daven in Aramaic. It's not necessarily B'Chaloshin. When you're davening Mitzibur, you can do it in any language because you don't need the Malachim anyway. It says Gemara, really? Really, the Malachim, they don't recognize Aramaic? But for time in the Braisa, Yochanan Kagol Shama Baskol. He heard a Baskol, Mibes Kodesh HaKodeshim, from the holiest of holies, which is now again this parasha that Achrei Mois by the going into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, Shu Omer, that said like this. The Baskol said, Natzchu Talia. The young ones have won. The Ozl Lagacha Kraval Antuchia, which they went to they fought this war as at Antuchia, meaning the Pirchikun, the young ones of the Kanim, from the household of Chashmana, they went to fight with the Greeks before Yom Kippurim, and they were fighting on Yom Kippurim. And Yochanan heard a Baskol that when he was doing the Avodah in Yom Kippurim, in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, he heard a Baskol that they won the war that they were fighting against Antioch there against the Greeks. There's another story, B'Shimon HaTzadik. Shashama Baskom and Beis Kodesh HaKodeshim, he also heard a heavenly voice coming out of the Holy Shomer, which was saying, B'Telas Avidita, that this war has stopped. The Amar Sana, that the enemy said, Laisa al-Heichal, that they're going to bring on the Heichal, on the sanctuary of the Beis HaMikdash, and Benedeg Gaskalgos, which was the name of a Greek king, he was killed. Ubatlik is and his decrees are nullified. And because of Isha, they wrote down that time, they remembered what the moment of the Baskal was. But was exactly the time when this king was killed, and therefore the Gzer against destroying the Beis HaMikdash was nullified. Now the problem is Baloshan and Amihayim, it was said in Aramaic. I thought you said that the Malachim, which are these shluchim of the Rebbeinu Shalom, which is the Baskal going and coming, whatever, when you're speaking to them, I thought they don't know Aramaic. So how could they be saying these messages to us here in this world? Who's the Baskal? So the Maluchim, so in the Shlichim from the Rebbeinu Shalom. I thought you said you don't know Aramaic. Says the Gemara, 2 answers. If you want, you could say Baskal Shani. The heavenly voice is different, meaning that character that's appointed for the Baskal, he knows the 70 languages. Because Delashmu Yavida. What he's sent for what? The Baskal Yoitzes, Bas Ploini Leploini. Where's my Basherte? Ich verstehe nicht, wer that? Right? What language is he talking? He's talking to me in Espanol, and Nilo Mevin. That's why I'm still single. Right? You have to be able to understand the Baskal is talking all languages to all people. Sometimes this one, sometimes that one. So he was designated Efashtait Aramish. but all the other maluchim don't know. That's one pshat. But if you want to say no, Gabriel Hava. The one who actually said the heavenly voice was Gabriel, the malach, the mamar that the master says. The Gemara says later on the paragraph of Lamavam Beis. Gabriel came along and he taught Yosef at Tzadik Shim Lashon, the 70 languages, and that's how he was able to outdo Paroi, because he knew also Lashon HaKodesh and he knew only all the other languages. But the point is that you're right, Malachim do not know Aramaic, but here either it's a Baskal, the Baskal knows Aramaic, or it actually was Gabriel, that he was specifically the one Malach that knew the 70 languages. But again, a Yochid should not daven in Aramaic because he needs the Malachim, and the Malachim don't know Lashon, they don't know Aramaic. So the Mishnah continued and said, Birchas Hamazon, that benching is also one of those things that don't need to be said in any specific language. Now Rashi says, as our Gemara, don't have the Girsa Menalan, because we're not asking, it doesn't need a pasuk, because Mechatese would need Lashon HaKodesh. You have to tell me it has to be Lashon HaKodesh. So we're not asking, we're just explaining. The Chsivit says the pasuk in the bottom, it says that you're going to eat and you're going to be full and you're going to bench Hashem your God, which it's any language that you bless. Meaning, like Rashi says, we didn't tell you a language has to be. Not asking Menolan, we're just showing it to you. Moreover, we said Shavuos Eidus, when the person takes an oath regarding that he doesn't know testimony, and then we find out that he was lying. So the Rashi's girsa actually here is Menolan. From where do we know? Because if it doesn't say a pasuk, you could say that it would need to be similar to the oath of Har Grizim and Har Evil, which was B'Lashon HaKodesh. That was a shvua. So here, when you made a shvuas edus, maybe you would think to say that shvua has to be B'Lashon HaKodesh. No, and then you'll be liable for the carbon of swearing falsely. No, because the Chsivit says the pasuk Yikra b'nefesh kisechet, a person's going to sin b'shama kol Allah, and he's going to hear the sound of the curse, which is that he was sworn to say that he does know testimony, he was lying. Now, for the fact that it doesn't say b'shpi'u ba'Allah, that he swore with an oath, it says b'shama kol Allah. What's the extra word v'shama? It's b'chalashon sheshamas. Any language that he understands. We're going to tell him in any language, and he's going to swear in his English, say, yes, I don't know any testimony, and I'm going to swear to it. That is b'chalashon. So too, the Mishnah said, the last item was shvuas b'kadm. If someone swears falsely that he doesn't have someone else's deposit, it turns out he was lying and he really had it, so that's b'chalashon that he's swearing falsely. Says the Gemara, how do you know that? Because Asya Techa Techa Meshvus Eidis, if Xer Shabbat says Techa Meshvus Eidis, which you just a second ago said that we know it's for Shama, that it's any language. So over here it's in any language. Then the Mishnah went on to the next list. We said, and these are said in Lashon HaKodesh specifically, Mikri Bikurim, the Parasha Bikurim, Chalitza B'chul, etc. Ad, when the Mishnah started explaining the sources of them. The Mishnah said, Mikri Bikurim, said, how do you know the Parasha Bikurim that it has to be said by Lashon HaKodesh? Because it says, "V'nisa b'malach," you're going to respond, and you're going to say, "L'fnei Hashem b'kerech Hashem your God." Well, how know him? It says over there by the Leviim, "V'anu Leviim amru el kol ish Yisrael." Now we said, and this is all from the Mishnah. Mani amar laham Lashon HaKodesh, just like over there by the responding of the Leviim is in Lashon HaKodesh. Avkam Lashon HaKodesh also over here is Lashon HaKodesh. Ad kam the words of the Mishnah. Frek the Gemara, v'Leviim gufay menalan. If our Mishnah made it sound like they were going to tell you by Har Grizim Har Evil, but it didn't. And it says, what was Kate at Har Grizim Har Evil? It just said the whole history of what happened when they passed over, but it didn't tell us specifically, how do we know the Levim said those curses in Lashon HaKodesh? So the Gemara is asking, Levim gufay menalan. Says the Gemara, Asik kol kol mi Moshe. We learn how to Xer Shav the word kol by Moshe Rabbeinu to the kol over here by the Levim. Why? Ksevach says over here they said kol ram. It says on the Levim amra kol ish Yisrael kol ram out loud. But Ksevach says over there Moshe David Moshe will speak by Elikim Yanen b'kol, and God responded with a voice. That was by Matan Torah. Now we know Matan Torah obviously was said by Lashon HaKodesh. So Malahal B'Lashon HaKodesh, just like over there, Matan Torah, the Torah Hashem gave was B'Lashon HaKodesh. Of Kam B'Lashon HaKodesh. So over here it says the word Kol was also B'Lashon HaKodesh. That's how we know Levim said B'Lashon HaKodesh, and that's how we know that also the Parsha of Bikurim, which also says Vanisa, was also B'Lashon HaKodesh. Then the next item was actually Machlokes. Chalitza Ketzah B'Chulu. We said Chalitza. How do you know that that's B'Lashon HaKodesh? So the Tanakhama said, you know from Xer Shava, from the Klalis. Yudah says, no, you don't need to learn that from Ba'ansa. You can learn that from the word Kacha. Kacha sounds like it has to be like this, which is B'Lashon HaKodesh. But then the Gemara says, okay, but Rabbanan, who they know it from the Xer Shava, Hai Kacha, this that it says that the word Kacha by Chalitza, yeah, right, not from over there, but Amr Kacha Yas Le'ish. From that pasuk that it says Kacha Yas Le'ish, that's where he knows it from Rabbi Yehuda. What do they do with that Kacha if they know it already from Ba'ansa? So they needed to teach you something else. The davar shuhu ma'isa ma'akiv. That if there's an action element in the chalitza, that's critical. For example, the taking off of the shoe, what's called the chalitza, the spitting, which is called the rikika, because kacha sounds like it's nikuve. Azoy davzan. This is how it has to be, which you're not allowed to change it. But they put that near the word yasa to say that the mais is ma'akiv. The words of ansa v'amra kacha ye'asa leish. So the word kacha is near the word ye'asa, what has to be done, to teach you that that's ma'akiv. Rabbi Yehuda, where does he know that from? He knows it from mikoi kacha, meaning it could have been written ansa v'amra kai. It says kacha. The extra chaf is teaching you both of these halachas. But abana kai kacha lemashmalo, they don't really. The word kacha is a regular word. They don't learn that there's an extra letter over here to tell you another drasha, and therefore they don't know it from kacha. They know it from ba'ansa, as we said the machlekes. If we continue to the base, the Gemara continues asking Rabbi Yehuda. That it says. I mean, there's a few things that she said, but over there you see that it says, after she takes off the shoe is another thing that she says. We said there's two phrases that she says. First, he doesn't want to. Then he says, yeah, I taka don't want to. And then after she takes off the shoe, she says, yeah, that kachi aslish is what you're supposed to do to this man. So it says it over there, but it's going on all of them. Right. Right. So that's the kacha is going on either like Rabbi Yehuda is saying b'lashon hazeh in this language. What? What is wrong with Gzeir? No, Rabbi Yehuda just said you don't need Gzeir Shava. You could, and that's actually the Gemara's question right now. What does he do with it? But he says from the Pusik line. Like kucha azoi b'lashon hakodesh. I don't need the answer. But then the Gemara asks now right now. Rabbi Yehuda, hi, this Gzeir Shava of the answer of Amra. My overlay. What does he do with that? I mean, the Chacham say you have a Gzeir Shava. It says answer over here. It says v'an over there. So that Gzeir Shava, what does he do with it? It says he needs it like more levim. Actually, interesting. He says it goes the other way around. He needs it to teach to the levim the b'lashon hakodesh. Not to learn out from levim to chalitza. No, he knows by chalitza because it says kacha. He actually needs it to teach that levim are like chalitza, that it requires. Says Gemara, what he told him, Moshe. I thought you told me that you already know levim said of lashon hakodesh because it says koil by the levim and koil by Moshe, and by Moshe is given in lashon hakodesh. So that's what I know by levim. Why do I need to learn that levim from chalitza? Says the Gemara, very important principle. Ani gama. Rabbi Yehuda had learned this Gzeir Shava of aniya ba'ansa from his Rebbe. The Gzeir Shava of kol like gama he didn't learn. Meaning he never heard this from his Rebbe. And the person cannot make up a Gzeir Shava unless he received it. It has to be Messiah from Moshe Rabbeinu. Can't make it up. He said, oh, okay, Gzeir Shava. Yeah, Gzeir Shava you can't. So therefore he couldn't say that. So therefore, don't ask me why I didn't say kol. He never learned the Gzeir Shava. He learned Gzeir Shava on the honor. The question is, what does it come to teach us? That we find in Mefarshim, they explain that you could interpret that, but he had that Messiah. So therefore, that's how he knows about Levim, actually from Chalitza, not the other way around, like the Chamim learning out Chalitza from the Levim. I think Mar says, Tanya Hochi, similar in the Brisa, Yehuda, he says, Kamakim Shnema Koi, Kacha, Aniya, Va'amira, which is something that's dependent on speech. It's telling you, like we said, Kacha is teaching you Lashon HaKodesh, Koi is teaching like this, Ani Va'amir is teaching you Lashon HaKodesh. Now, for example, what's all these examples that it has to be specific Lashon HaKodesh? The word Koi, like we have Koi Sabarchu, like you have by Nesias Kapayim, that Rabban learned out later on, Daf Chesed and Aleph, with Gzeir Shava. Rabbi Yehuda says, you don't need a Gzeir Shava that Berachas Kaim has to be in Lashon HaKodesh, because the word Koi itself means Koi Azoi. It has to be in this language. We have the word Kacha by the Chalitz, like we said before. Kacha means Lashon HaKodesh. And Ani Va'amira, where do we see that that's something that tells you Lashon HaKodesh? That's the Leviim. Oh, you see, the Bryce is saying that regarding the Leviim, that the Rabbanan learn out from Kol, he's coming to say, no, by Leviim, the way you know that it's Lashon HaKodesh is you learn out from Ani Va'amira, from Yavama, where it said over there Kacha. So you see, like we answered that according to Rabbi Yehuda, how do you know the Levim is Lashon HaKodesh? Actually from Chalitza. not the other way around, like the Chum learn Chalitza from Levim, because they learn out Levim from Kol Kol. He doesn't have Kol Kol. He learns it out actually from Aniyah and Miyah. That's what you see from this brisa. Inevitably, that he's learning it out from that of Yavama. Now the Mishnah said that brachas klal is ketzad, and again, it didn't really explain to us in the Mishnah the source of the brachas klal is that it was b'lashon hakodesh. That our Gemara actually brought the sources for that, but our Mishnah went through the history of just saying that what is this referring to, the brachas and klal, is that you're telling me that we learn out from there the lashon hakodesh regarding the context of like the parasha Bikurim. So the Mishnah told us, once the Jews went over the Jordan, etc., went the whole story that's near Shechem, etc. So Tomar learned the brisa that actually elaborates this as a machlekes. The pasuk says in Devarim, when the Jews were in the Midbar, so they were told the signs of this Har Gerizim and Har Evel and their places where they are, because they were told that when they're going to get there, what they have to do. So it says in the pasuk, Elohema, aren't they? Behold, they're Be'iva Yarden. They're the other side of the Jordan because they were on the other side of the Jordan right now. Now the Jews were on the eastern side of the Jordan, like it says, the Bnei Gad, Bnei Reuben, they took their portion of Be'iva Yarden on the eastern side, towards the east. Now they were told that these mountains are going to be on the west of the Jordan. So the Brisa explains Me'evil Yarden ve'elach, very far away from the Jordan to the west, meaning not near the Jordan River. That's the Rabbi Yehuda. And when the pasuk continues and says Achrei derech Mavoy Hashemesh, what does it mean Mavoy Hashemesh? Mavoy Hashemesh, the path of the sun, that refers to the east, because that's where the sun comes out from. When it's saying Achrei derech Mavoy Hashemesh, that's Mokum Shechama Zerachas. That's the place where the sun shines, where the sun comes from. In other words, far away from the eastern side of the Jordan. Because like we find in Bereshis Rabbah, says Rashi, and Rashi brings the Salat Torah, wherever it says Acharei versus Achar, Acharei means distant. Acharei Advar Ma'ela means much, much later. So when I'm saying Acharei Derech Mevay Hashemesh means where the sun comes from, which is the east. Acharei means far away from that, which is going to be towards the west. When the pasuk continues, it says Be'eretz HaKanani Hayush Ba'arava, in the land of the Canaanim, that's in the that is dwelling in Arava, Eila Har Gerizim Har Evel. This refers to Har Gerizim Har Evel. Sheyeshim Mem Kutiyim. That's where the Kutiyim live, which Rashi says that actually was in Talmudic times. By the Talmud, in the Brisa, the Sancheir went and he exiled the 10 tribes, like it says V'yovei Melech Asher, and he brought Anoshim from Bavel, Umakusa. That's where the word Kutim comes from, and they put them in the cities of the Shamron, like it says in Malachim Beis. So those were the cities of the Shamron, as taught in the Mishnah in the Shamron. That means that's where the Ketim were in the times of the Brisa, which was Mulhal Gilgal, and these are all the psukim of the Devarim, trying to define for us exactly what this area is. It means Samach Gilgal, near the place called Gilgal. It means refers to Shechem, as we find Ulahal Noem, because it says in Bereshit, V'yaver Avram Ba'aretz, Avram went in the land of Canaan at Mokum Shechem until the place of Shechem ad Loin Moeder. So you see, Ma'aloin Moeder, Amalahal is Shechem. Afkan Shechem, it's also referring to that it's Shechem. Now, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, which Rashi says actually not to have the Girsa Tanya because it's all one big Brisa as it's brought in the Sifri. So okay, it continues. Amar Belazar B'Rabisi. It says, but it was in this idea that Ziyafti Sifri Kutiyim, that I was able to contradict, that I was able to forge their written books, because like Rashi said, they had this like Torah Shabiksav, because they didn't believe in Torah Shabbal Peh. So Martilehem, I said to them, Ziyaftim Teraschem, you forged your Torah, but and you didn't come out with anything. Why? Because you say Elonim Meir Shechem. Elonim Meir Shechem. We also agree that Elonim Meir Shechem. But on Lamdu Gzeir Shava, we learn from Gzeir Shava, as we just mentioned a moment ago from Avraham Avinu. How did you learn that? How do you know what you're saying? Which really the point of all of Torah Shabbal Peh. How do you know what an esrog is? How do you know what anything is? You don't know anything unless you have Torah Shabbal Peh. So basically, you guys have, shot yourself in the foot. Like you don't know anything. How do you know on sukkahs you take a citron? Just maybe take a watermelon, whatever. So you don't know anything. So he was basically just showing a mockery of them. Now, this was all the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua. This was one opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Huda regarding how to interpret where the location of Har Gerizim Har Evel was. Rabbi Lazar, he says a different interpretation, as we'll see. He darshans the word differently. Behold, it's in the other side of the Jordan. He says Not like Rabbi Yehuda says, Me'evil Yarden ve'elech, far away. No, Samach Yarden, it's actually close to the Jordan. And he says, if it would be like Rabbi Yehuda says, very far away from the Jordan, but it says in the pasuk, when you're going to pass over the Jordan, sounds like that day you're going to erect the stones on Har Evel. Obviously, it's close by, not far away. And when it says in the pasuk, after the path of where the sun comes, actually means far away from the west. You're right. The word achri means far away, but he translates Mavai HaShemesh, not like Rabbi Yehuda as where the sun comes from, which is in the east. No, actually refers to the west, because Mavai HaShemesh could be translated as Kibo HaShemesh. When the sun sets, Mavai could mean from the word ba, of like coming, meaning setting, not coming from. So it's actually far away from Makom Shacham HaShekas, far away from where the sun sets, which is far away from the west, which actually means on the east, which actually closer to the Jordan, which is on the east. And when so that's how Rebbe Lazar darshans the Pesukim. Now, Rebbe Lazar actually asks on Rabbi Yehuda, he says, wait a second, the Eretz HaKanani, it's not the Eretz HaKanani, it's Eretz Chivihi, because Shechem is Chivi, like it says V'yova Yaakov Shalom. It says over there Shechem ben Chamor HaChivi with Nasiya Aretz. So Shechem is Chivi. So if that's the case, Hayeshev Ba'arava, it was in Arava, but the area in Chivi is only mountains. Moreover, Mul HaGilgal, but they didn't see Gilgal because they were far away from Gilgal. And these Simonim weren't set on them. So why they said? So rather, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Oimer, which, as Rashi says, Rabbi Lezer also is relying on the opinion of Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, and it's like him that he's explained to the Psukim. It says, Loiba Kasev, the pasuk at the end is not coming, Elaharis lehen derech b'shni. It's actually coming to teach you the way to go by the second time, kederech sheher elen b'rishon, the way he showed them the first time, meaning when the Jews left Egypt, so there was a amud anan, there was a pillar of cloud that that directed them. Now also here, when they were coming the second time to Eretz Yisrael, to straighten out their path, to show them the way, because it was revealed and known by Hashem that the cloud is going to stop by the death of Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's not going to go with Yeshua. So who's going to lead them? There's no GPS anymore. So he showed them that after they're going to cross the Jordan to conquer the land, they should go in a conquered way and a settled way through the land of the Canaani, which is in Arava, and not to go around near the edge of the Jordan through the land of the Chivi, which are mountains and hills. Rather, they should go in from the west, far away from the Jordan, and come around and conquer it that way. So like the Gemara explains, the words of the Pesukim are teaching you how they should come in. It's not describing the area of Hagriz Ma'abel. When it says Derech, was bederech lechu, go through paths, and don't go through fields and vineyards.
So what's the point?
It was telling him.
Because the mice, if you've been there, all the mountains around Hagriz and Abel are about the same height. And to know specifically which mountain is much more difficult than to know which direction.
Right. No, here the machlik is about that they want to identify what was the was this Hagriz Ma'abel, where was the place of the Kolos and the Brachas, and
at the time of the Tanoim or the original?
At the time, at the original story, when
they knew that there were people that were still holding Basitukim, and that they were living there, as they still do today.
I'm saying so. Yeah, okay. So you want to know if they could locate it based on that? Yeah. Sometimes we have these questions that based on facts. How come we can't prove it? Why we having this machlek is where something is or what it is? Why don't you go out and test it? And Maral's very busy with that. We don't do it based on scientific evidence. We go based on drashos psukim, how we know ideas. But all the Gemara is saying right now is that don't ask me that these psukim seem to contradict the facts. Mula Gilgal, they don't add up. Say no, that's something else. That's only going to tell me how you're going to travel. It's not identifying the area of Hagriz Ma'abel. When it says derech, it means bederech l'chu b'lebesaz kram. Commentary is Canaan through paths, not through fields and vineyards. Hayeshev just means beyishuv l'chu. Go in the settled areas. V'lebim midbaras. Don't go through deserts. Ba'arava means ba'arava l'chu. Go in the plains. V'lebahar midbaras, and don't go through the mountains and the hills. That's all it's saying, but it's not identifying the actual location of Har Grizim, Har Evel. Now, relating to this idea that they crossed over the Jordan River, so tell about in the Brisa that Ketzad Avru Yisrael Seyadin. How did the Jews cross over the Jordan River? So the truth is, B'chalim, every single day, the Aron HaKodesh would travel after two different flags. The camps would be divided with flags, as it says in Parshas Nasa by the Masayis of the Degalim. But Vayim Nasa Tchila, this day when they passed over the Jordan, the Aron went in front. Shnemak says the in Yeshua, it says Hine Aron Habris. Behold, the covenant, the box of the covenant, Adin Kala Aretz, the master of all the land, will go in front of you, which that sounds like in front of everyone. Now, every single day, Levim would carry the Aron, like that's the Bnei Kas, like it says in Mishmartim, what they would guard would be the Aron and the Shulchan, etc. But today, the day they passed over the Jordan, the Kahanim carried it. Like it says over there in the pasuk, it says it was when the soles of the legs of the Kahanim rested, who were Hashem, who were carrying the Aron Hashem, etc. So you see the Kahanim were carrying it that day. Tanya learned the Brisa, he says, in three places the Kahanim carried the Aron. One is like we say Keshavas Yadin when they crossed over the Jordan. The second one is when they surrounded Jericho, Yericho, like it says over there in the pasuk, V'yikra Yeshua ben Nun el Kahana b'yom aleim, it says Suas Arena Bris Hashem. And the third one was when they brought the Aron back to its place in the days of Shloimo to the Kodesh HaKodeshim, because the pasuk says in Malachim Aleph, V'yivoy kol ziknei Yisrael b'yisu Kahanim es Aron, says the Kahanim carried the Aron, which was they brought it back. What do you mean l'mekameh to its place? Because Rashi gives the background. He says that when the Aron was exiled in the days of Eli, where it was taken from the Kodesh HaKodeshim of the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu had made, that the Mishkan was in Shiloh, and the Philistines took it. When the Philistines returned it, there was no place where to put it because the Mishkan Shiloh was already destroyed. So it stayed in this house of Avinadav. And from there, David brought it at the end of 20 years to the house of Obed Edom. And from there, he brought it to Ir David until Shlomo Melech built the Beis Hamikdash. And then he built what's called the Devir, which is the Kodesh HaKodeshim within the Heichel. And you have this Amatrax and this wall of Amma that separates in the area where the Parechis was. And that's called Mekameh. That's what we're saying. It's considered its designated place. Like the pasuk says, "Vayiviyu HaKahanim Sorin Bris Hashem El Mekameh," to its place. El Dever HaBayis. Those are the three times in history that the Kahanim carried the Aron. Thank you to any time.
Everybody who touched Aaron died. So